Dr. Steelhammer, Vladimir Klitschko, and Dr. Iron Fist, Vitaly Klitschko, Shannon the Cannon Briggs, and Butterbean, Cruiserweight King Jai Obataia.
Boxing King Media powered by BYD. We're out here. It's not the BYD showroom. It's Johnny Nelson's humble abode in the back garden. So I tell you what, it's beautiful around here, Johnny. You can't hear a car. All you can hear is birds singing. And soon we'll see chickens running around.
Yeah, you know what? This is why people don't understand why I always want to come home. Just the peace and quiet is perfect. So that does it for me.
I bet it does. How much time do you spend in this garden then? Like, especially in the summer months?
You don't see me, I'm here. That's it. I'm like, you know, when you were younger, no, people used to spend all the time in the garden. That's me. So I just chill. It's just peaceful, no hassle. That's how it should be. I have my nieces up, my nephews up, my grandkid, my granddaughter up. So I like that. It's a nice energy. It's a nice positive vibes. That's what you need in life.
You definitely do, and the boxing is on a massive positive vibe right now. And you know, I'm here to talk about the weekend's action. So much went down. I know you spoke a bit about the weight cut, etc. So I'm going to kind of break it down into a timeline. So just want to get your initial opinion on, because there were two sides to the story. Matchroom's side was that our guy's coming up from welterweight to middleweight, fighting a naturally heavier guy, putting himself in a dangerous position. And then obviously the other side's angle was that their guy's a lot heavier. He's boiling down to weight, and he's got a rehydration clause to play with. But obviously he's been making that weight for the last 6 years, but without a rehydration clause. So just jump straight in, Johnny. Who, from your experience, had the benefit going into that fight? If you was a fighter, would you want to be the guy moving up, eating what you want, or the guy that's having to boil down with the rehydration clause?
Well, you know what, the fight itself tells you the answer to that story. You look at the condition of both fighters towards the end. Which fighter ended up in hospital? Just come out today. I know Conor went for checks, and I know for a fact anybody with any sense that looked at that fight, the last round, the way those boys went at it, you thought, who would run out of gas first? Because you think Chris has absolutely exhausted himself, because we saw him 24 hours before sweating the life out of himself. So common sense, anybody with common sense would say, well, it affect him. For Conor doesn't train at the weight. Conor gets to the weight probably 2 or 3 times a year whenever he's fighting. That's when Conor hits the weight. The rest of the time, he'd probably be around that weight. So now he's fit at that weight. So who would it favour more? The situation it favoured Conor. And you saw that. You saw the shots Conor took. You saw the shots Conor gave. Conor rocked him. You saw the shots. Conor put him in hospital to get for a cautionary procedure. So the answer to all of that is, well, it suited Conor more than it suited Chris. It doesn't matter what he said or done before. You saw for your own eyes.
Indeed. And so that's your opinion with regards to the whole condition of the fight. We get to fight night. Loads of drama before the main bell. The first one was the big one. The doors open to that Rolls Royce, and out pops Chris Eubank Sr. It literally blew the top off the stadium. An iconic moment. What did you think of that? And I understand you was talking to Senior throughout the day.
You couldn't write a script any better. The movies will be made like that from that storyline alone. But this was real life. That was it was real life playing out itself. And Chris said he was always coming. You know what? He fooled me. But as long as he was there, that was the important thing, that he was there for his son. He should have been there for his son, for all the what ifs. He should have been there for his son because it was his son. And I understand, you know, they have their personal issues, what's going on, and which isn't our business. But at the end of the day, when it comes to that life and death situation, because boxing is the only place you can legally get killed, you understand that. And Chris knows that himself. He looks at what happened to Michael Watson. You know, you look around at how dangerous boxing can be, but then when you see your son boiling himself down to get in such a tough fight against a young lion, like Chris Senior said, why would you not be there? Now, but you know, sometimes ego and pride makes people stop using common sense, and you regret it when it's too late. I think Chris saw sense. And regardless if he agrees with Junior's philosophy or his approach to boxing, him slamming the egg in his head or whatever, regardless of if he believes that it proves it or not, at the end of the day, he let his son, be you do your thing. I don't agree with what you're dealing with, but you be you. And Chris is a very honourable man, so I can understand why it burnt him so much, his father so much. I can understand why Senior was so upset because of the conduct of fighters and how they carried themselves, because he's an honourable guy. It's a noble sport, and he'll keep telling you that over and over again, and he's right. Kids look up to us, they make movies about us, so you've got to represent. And I think this was the point that Senior was constantly trying to make. So he wasn't happy with some of the conduct that he saw from his son. But the only thing Chris did wrong, Junior did wrong in all of that build-up, was the egg and coming in late for the weigh-in. That's the only. Everything else, he spoke the truth. He spoke his mind. He wasn't rude. He didn't use bad language. He didn't run anybody else. So the only thing he did wrong was that. I think if you want an opinion on why it is, I think you look at the careers of both Conor and Junior. At the beginning of Conor's career, his dad wasn't around because his dad wanted him to want it more than he wanted it. So he said, "Go on, son, you do your thing." At the beginning of Junior's career, his dad was always around because his dad, he was the mouthpiece. You look at interviews where his dad sat there and he's talking. Junior's not talking. So it would have been hard for Senior to let his son go. So I think this is where the clash has been. I think this is where the clash created. That I think once Junior had grown up, he said, "Dad, no, you can't. If you want to be in my camp, this is your position. If that position's not good enough for you, you have to come out." And that's basically how I see it. And I think so. It was pride more than anything else. And you can kind of understand that Chris is very articulate, he's very vocal, he's very thoughtful about what he does, but his son's very much the same. So you can't have two bulls in a pen. And so they're very much like each other. I saw the old footage of Chris talking to Junior, and that answers it all. Lennox had to say, "Look, you got to leave, no matter what you say, you got to leave him be." So isn't it funny how, Lennox posted that out, and he thought, wow, you know what, I get that, I see that, now I understand. And you know what, hopefully Chris understands that as well. For Conor, I saw a smile, even though through the upset, on Nigel's face, because for those faint-hearted around us, we'd probably written Conor off, thinking that's it, he's lost, he's done. I boxed on the undercard when Nigel Benn boxed Michael Watson and lost. That was his first loss. He got knocked out, and everybody said, "That's it, he's done." Then you look at the career of Nigel Benn from that point. He went away, went to America, beat Doug DeWitt, became the world champion. He came back an even more dangerous fighter. And Nigel understood what that loss did for him, how it improved him, elevated him to the next level. So even though his son was devastated, everybody was upset, and even though he was upset for his son, he understood that would be the making of my boy. And I personally believe that because the DNA of Conor, he's like speaking to his dad. Through and through, and I keep saying you've got two young boys that were born into wealth and luxury, that fought like they were born into poverty, that had nothing. You can't buy that. You can't buy that spirit. You can't buy that attitude. You can't buy that appetite. So these two guys, they're different. They're different from the most fighters that are out there. They want to fight because they want to fight. The money's great, but they want to fight, and that fight showed it.
Yeah, I think you kind of put that bit up beautifully there, because it wasn't just one of them. Both of them come from backgrounds where they didn't need to fight like that, and they was willing to put their lives on the line for the entertainment of everyone else, and also not to give up their father's name. So I definitely respect both of them for that. As Senior arrives, then the next bit of drama, Billy Joe Saunders attempting to go into EUBANK's changing room. They did tell us that was going to happen, and he tried his best to get in, and obviously we had that commotion with Napa, EUBANK's manager. What did you make of that? Because that again, it was like WWE, wasn't it? Like, I'd love to know how them two big incidents, Senior arriving and Billy Joe, pumped the pay-per-view buys in that hour.
Well, of course, it was like a soap opera, a Lifetime, and I think Billy Joe, I'd have done exactly the same if I was Chris. You ain't coming in. The fight was happening no matter what. You're not coming in. Well, we'll find if you get someone else. He's not coming in. So, and at the end of the day, he just stuck to his word. No matter what happens, he is not coming in my dressing room, no matter what noise you make. So if they wanted that fight to go on, then he'll have just said, if you want this fight to go on, you better get somebody else. And but it was a great way to ruffle their feathers. But you also got to understand, when you've got a fight on, your team are there to try and disrupt the other team. You know, when it comes to the gloves, when it comes to the dressing gown, when it comes to who's walking out first, when it comes to the negotiation of the fight, that is what your team's there for. So Conor's team, if it was Conor's idea or Eddie's idea, whoever's idea, it was the whole idea was to ruffle the feathers of Team EUBANK. And listen, pay-per-view, it made a massive difference. And it was like, even in the stadium, you could see all this stuff on the big screen, and the crowd were going mad. And when Chris got out of the vehicle and it came on, that's the first time we saw it. I didn't know. So when you saw it at home, we saw it, and we'd like big gulp. I remember speaking to a couple of guys afterwards, and all of them said the same thing. And I don't know if it's a different for men and women, but you had guys that were there and they think about the relationship with their father, or they think about that relationship with their son, and that moment right there, guys were saying, you know what, the hairs on my arm stood up, it really choked me, because again, you can't have two bulls in a pen, and every young man is going to cross paths with his dad because he's going to want to test himself. And it was just nice that senior saw sense, understood what was valuable. He understood what was important, and he understood that Saturday night in 10 years' time, the argument or the am I going, am I not going, will be a blip in 10 years' time, 15 years' time. And if he didn't go, it's something you would never ever be able to turn back. My father's funeral, I never speak at funerals because I can't talk. I get too emotional. I didn't speak at my mum's funeral. I definitely didn't speak at Brendan's funeral. And my father, he passed away, and they want me to speak at the funeral, and I'm like, no, he's speaking. And then I sat down at the end when they about to go. I thought, what are you doing, Johnny? You want to let people recognise who this guy is, what he's done, how he's taken care of you. And I kind of kicked myself. When it's gone, it's gone. You know what I mean? I'm like, I should have said something. I should have stood up and give homage. But I had my reasons, but I thought my reasons are not big enough for that. Chris had his reasons for potentially not coming. But I'm just happy common sense kicked in. I'm just happy it kicked in.
Definitely, you can never change the clock on them sort of times. And them stopping Billy Joe from going in the changing room, have you ever had a situation like that yourself, where there's been some sort of like argument or debate over somebody trying to check the wraps when you don't want them in there?
Well, I had wise people working with me, so if I did have that debate or argument, I was not aware of it, and that is their job, to keep me away from all the mishaps. So I'm quite sure if you speak to Dominic or Brendan around, you speak to Brendan, and he'd tell you of all the skullduggery and tricks that they were trying to do to ruffle the fight. But because they did their job that well, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of a lot of stuff that was said of them, but I'm quite sure it happened. So again, it was just every trick in the book was played, and it was dealt with correctly.
We go on to the fight, Johnny. Epic ring walks. The fight starts, in most people's opinions, Conor started really fast and sharp, landed a lot of shots. And then Chris came back into it. And then there was a period from, I want to start talking about the fight from round 6 onwards, because that's when the fight was like a movie script. It looked like Conor was going to stop Chris Eubank Jr. And he hit him a few times. I was ringside and I saw the amount of times Chris held on, and he gripped Conor's arm under his elbows and leant on him. Yeah. So just talk to me about that 6 to 9 period.
So you look at the fight, and when you look at the fight, the people that were there in the audience, a lot of them leant towards Conor, thinking Conor was winning, because Conor's movement, the shots he threw, they looked like they were landing, and they weren't landing as many shots as they think. So I understand the frustration of people saying, no, it was a lot closer. I don't agree with the scorecards, but the fight was close, but the right man won. I think Chris, the championship rounds, to me, was fighting on pure adrenaline, spirit, pride, and everything else. Physically, he was done. He was done. You saw this man rinsing himself out today, but he was done. And his feet were planted in the ground. And I said, his legs have gone. He's done. And Conor's success was actually when he was being a bit erratic, jumping in, letting the shots go out again, jumping in. When he tried to stand there and box him, that's where Chris got the better of him, put him back with a jab, the conventional shots. Conor's success was when he was erratic. And his punch stats, the pace he dropped it, I'm like, damn. And I thought, Chris is not going to last his pace. And so, but Chris then, at least he had the brain and the wisdom and the experience that he's got over Conor to say, right, I've got to use my attributes to better him. So when he's in close, lean on him, drop your knees on him. Old school, if you watch old school boxing, that's what Ali do to fighters. He'd drop his weight on them, so they've got to wrestle him off. He did it to George Foreman. George Foreman gassed himself out by the time he got to round 8. You've got to understand, fighting is not just about boxing, it's about understanding the art of war. The understanding when a man's in close, you've got to pull him in close, lean on his arm, twist him up, hit him on the blind side of the referee. You've got to make him feel uncomfortable, so he's in situations that he's not prepared for in the gym. And Chris was smart enough and sharp enough to actually take advantage of that. But that was instincts kicking in, because when you've got nothing else left, you're going to do what happens to you instinctively. So instincts from experience kicked in, and it worked a treat. I think that's what got him, what pushed it over the line for him.
Tell me about, you could probably share your own experience here, because I spoke to Dom earlier and he told me about one of your fights where you had to cut weight drastically, and he said in his words you was effed like towards the later end of the fight. So try and describe to somebody who doesn't understand weight cuts what you feeling in them 6 rounds, 6 to 9, 10, with what dehydration setting in, obviously not had the right amount of food, all that kind of stuff.
So this is what worried me when I saw Chris weighing in, and that's why I rang his dad. And I'll tell you what it does for you. When it gets to that point, everything you've trained to do, all the fitness, all the strength, your muscle memory is there. It's all there. And so for the first half of the fight, you're on it, you're on point. But then when it gets to the second half of the fight, when you've got to dig deep, you've got to find that petrol tank you forgot was there. That's when you've struggled to make weight, it becomes hellfire. It's hard. You become raggedy. You become disjointed. You become disorientated. You just don't know, but you just know what you've got to do, but you just can't put it together. You can think about what you've got to do, but it just doesn't happen that way. And so when I saw Chris at the back in the fight, I thought he's going to run out of steam, because if Conor keeps his pace up, from what I've seen, this boy's not going to be able to hold that together. No way in a million years. And that's why towards the end, I've got to commend him, because it looked like that boy was willing to die in the ring first. And that's a really silly thing to say, but in reality, we make ourselves that promise sometimes. We do that deal with the devil. In reality, Chris put the boxing board of control in a, I think it was, precarious position, because once he put out the video of how he was making the weight, the boxing board of control, I think, should have stepped in, because you're not allowed to do that. We all do it, but you're not allowed to do it. And so, because the board have got to say you've done it safely. So he's showing them, I've done this, and God forbid the worst case scenario happened. That would have been used as evidence to destroy the British Boxing Board of Control. That would have been used as evidence in whatever case his father would have brought forward. That's what would have happened. And so, I thought, and I gather Conor was told to take it down, and he said, "I ain't taking it down."
You mean EUBANK?
Sorry, Chris Jr. was told to take it down. He said, "I ain't taking it down. Why should I?" So his team weren't happy about it, because they had to put out quite a few bushfires. I wonder what Robert Smith's take on it would be, because the Boxing Board of Control do an amazing job, and so therefore he'd have said they were in a situation, and I don't know. Chris could have said, "Oh, it was weeks ago," but it wasn't. You don't do that. You don't do that weeks ago. You do that like the night before, you do it the morning before. But to me, it was worrying. That's what worried me straight away. I'm like, wow, man, that's the difference between winning and losing.
The last two rounds, you know, Chris literally went hellfire. I think he threw over 100 punches in round 12, and I think the punch stats show that he threw over 1,000 in the whole fight. Pretty nuts considering what you're saying there, the condition he must have been in. So, how did you score the fight, Johnny? The last two rounds were epic. I think both men showed immense heart, and even Conor, when he was hurt, he was still firing back. It's
So I spoke to Jonathan Banks the day before. I said, what is this going to go down to? He said, it's not going to be about fitness because these two boys will be supremely fit. It's going to be about mentality, mindset, and how much they want it. And that's exactly what it was. And so I scored it. If they'd have said a draw, I'd have raised an eyebrow, but wouldn't kicked off much of a stink. But I scored it in favour of Chris. I didn't agree that it was like there was 4 rounds in it. I didn't agree with that because every round was hard. Every round was hard fought. I knew the fight was close. So I'd have said probably 1, if 2 rounds to Chris. But if they'd have said a draw, I'd have thought that'd have surprised me. I wouldn't have agreed with it, but I wouldn't have made a song and dance about it.
well, it's not. I think 116, 112 basically means, if my maths is right, Chris has won 8 rounds and Connor's won 4 rounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't agree.
He won like 2 rounds.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is I just think, but it's opinions. Everybody has an opinion. You see what you're looking for.
Last thing, Johnny, should they rematch? Because, you know, Eddie's raised concerns that, you know, it takes time of fighters' lives if he puts Conor in again with a heavier guy. And obviously there's obvious concerns if Chris is going to have to do rehydration clauses and make that kind of weight again.
So I don't know if I saw correctly, but His Excellency said, you know, he wants a rematch in September, same place, same situation. Injury-free, of course. Common sense would tell you these two to fight each other again, because why? Conor will be looking to go and fight for the welterweight world title, probably for a fraction of the money that he got paid there. Chris is talking about fighting Canelo. Again, he'll get decent money, but then the one that makes more business sense is Chris against Conor. Now, I remember when Carl Froch wanted to box Chavez Jr. and Barry Hearn said, no, you're going to box George Groves. He's like, why am I boxing George Groves? I've always wanted to box in Vegas. And Barry was smart enough and understood the business of saying, no, that's the fight you're doing. So under duress, Cole took the fight. The first fight went the way it did, but then 80,000 people later, you know, that's his selling point when these two guys are sat talking about it. So the right business move was made. Now that fight that we saw on Saturday, nationally, it was a big fight between two Brits. The whole card, it was a great card. Around the world, would it have made a massive difference? I don't think so. Around the world, would it have been a bigger deal? I don't think so. Around the world, you know, if you're a boxing fan, you'd know. Go to the average man in the street. Would it have made that much of a difference? No. But in England, everybody was talking about it. I was on the train, everybody was talking about it. So nationally, that fight was big. And these boys, again, you know, they'll be able to dine out on that if they box here against each other in the UK. But if they go internationally, it was a good fight if you're into boxing. But if you go to the average man in the street, I wonder how big that fight was. But it wasn't as big as what it was here in the UK. So common sense would tell me that if they want it, if they fancy it, and I think both fighters would, they'd fight each other again.
I'll tell you, not that my opinion counts. I'd love to see Billy Joe Saunders fight Chris Eubank, because I think the build-up would be bigger than this, because there's so much hatred between the guys and the incident with the raps. I just think it's such a big fight, and it probably just sells out a stadium.
It was funny, because when I read that Billy Joe was coming, I rang him. I was doing live on Sky Sports News. I went, yo, is it happening? He started laughing. He went, yes, brother, yes. I said, oh my goodness, he's the best trouble causer in the world. Yes. You know, when he was in the gym, he could cause trouble in an empty room. And he said, yes, it is happening. Oh my goodness. I thought, genius move by Team BENN to get him in. And he was going to create as much. You can imagine there, when watching Chris put the raps on, saying, no, that's not right, do it again. And so you know he'd cause as much hate, mayhem as possible in the dressing room. And I think Chris was well aware of that. That's why he wasn't getting in. But you know what? It was the theatre, the drama of what to expect. But you know what? He just added to the night.
Another big, it's just like big fight weeks back to back. So yeah, thank you and appreciate your time on the breakdown. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, not at all. I think what a way to go into summer. We've had some. It was a great show. The whole bill was a good bill. The fans left. I didn't hear one moan or groan from 67,000 people at Tottenham. So the fans thoroughly enjoyed it. Nationally, it's on the front of the back of all the newspapers. This rivalry started 35 years ago, and when it started 35 years ago, you know, these boys picked it up. It was 2 years in the making, almost 3 years in the making. So and it didn't fail to impress the fans and give them what they wanted.
Indeed, and again, as I always like to point out, the BYD seal, you know, our sponsors of the Brutally Honest podcast, and you know, the sponsor Johnny as well. I urge anyone to get down to the showroom in Sheffield for this summer and test drive a car. I promise you, you will be blown away, because I think I've heard that many people have gone and test driven them in the last few months, and they're like, and bought them and gone like, I can't believe how good they are.
I've 6, 8 people that have asked me about it, and they've gone down and they've bought, and I'm like, well, the proof's in the pudding. But you gotta test it out and see.
Indeed. And yeah, that's it really. Thank you very much for your time, Johnny. We'll see you soon.
Dr. Steelhammer, Vladimir Klitschko, and Dr. Iron Fist, Vitaly Klitschko, Shannon the Cannon Brigg, and Butterbean, Cruiserweight King Jai Opataya.